Hello and welcome. As he trained to be a doctor, he could never have imagined himself on stage leading South Asia's biggest rock band in the 1990s. But lately, this talented guitarist has found himself a campaigner pushing for better understanding of Islam and for peace between India and Pakistan. This week on One on One, meet Pakistani musician and activist Salman Ahmad. As a child growing up in Pakistan, he was told colourful stories about India by his refugee grandfather. When, as an adult, Salman Ahmad pushed for peace between the two countries, he risked his career and his life as extremists sent him death threats. In 1990, Salman formed the rock band Junoon with friends, challenging the conservative values of Pakistani society with politically motivated songs. But enormous commercial success and acclaim also followed. Today, the band's work often takes second place to solo music projects, as well as Salman's campaigning to promote HIV/AIDS awareness in South Asia. Since the 9/11 attacks, the motivated musician has also found himself working tirelessly to improve the image of Muslims in America. Salman, it's good to catch up with you again.
Yeah, great to see you again, Riz.
You know, Junoon, which means passion in Urdu for our viewers, was the biggest rock band in South Asia in the 1990s. What happened? Why did you guys split?
Well, right after 9/11, it brought a paradigm shift to my own thinking because I'm Pakistani American. I grew up in America, junior high school, went back to Pakistan, and then 9/11 happened. And for me, this whole idea of a civilizational conflict of where my American and my Muslim identity, there's some kind of conflict in there. I needed to just come back to the States. So I moved with my wife and my kids back to New York, same place where I grew up, in Rockland County, trying to build bridges between America and the Muslim world.
I'm going to get onto that more in a moment, but let me just go back through that illustrious past with Junoon, because you basically had a massive success. I mean, more than 20 million albums, I think, sold worldwide. A lot of firsts as well. You were quite pioneering and cutting edge. Tell me about some of those.
Yeah, the amazing thing is when I went back from high school, I was studying medicine. And it was at a time where Pakistan was ravaged by the post-Soviet Afghan conflict. You had Afghani refugees in Pakistan, a military dictatorship, so you had no FM radio, no music on television, right? And no place to play music. And the only thing I found, that gave me some sort of a sanity was playing my guitar. And it just came, that Junoon just came out of that. Because initially what started off as a hobby, just from word of mouth, people just all around Pakistan, there was a huge thirst. There was a vacuum for youth entertainment and music. Well, I was one of those guys who got a rock band together, and I had no idea that I would quit medicine and become a rock musician.
And I'm going to go into some of the things Junoon did in a moment, but let me ask you also about your solo career now as a musician. How are you finding the creative process altered since you don't spend time with Brian and Ali, the former members?
Well, actually, what I've done in the last 3 years is some of the stuff that you do. I did 2 documentaries. One is called Rockstar and Mullahs, which looks at the role of music in Islam and the conflict within moderate and extremist Islam. I went to Pakistan to shoot that. That won an award. Then I got another opportunity to do It's My Country Too, which looks at Muslim Americans post 9/11. So while I was doing that, I was also writing music. And my album Infinity has just come out, which is in the top 10 in India now.
And was that influenced by the sort of social stuff you were doing?
Oh, absolutely. For me, I'm equal parts Led Zeppelin and equal parts Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. And I kind of find that bridge to be natural. I'm not trying to be, westernized or to be Muslim. Both those identities come out through my music and all my work. And also, one of the songs on Infinity is about a woman it was HIV positive in Pakistan. It's called Al-Vida. And it gave me a great idea to do a video, a women's empowerment HIV/AIDS awareness video on this woman called Shukriya Gul from Lahore. And that's #1 on MTV.
Tell me more about the HIV/AIDS, your work as a Goodwill Ambassador for UNAIDS. How much do you spend time on that, and what areas do you focus on?
Well, Riz, in 2001, Kofi Annan asked me that, would I be able to, take this, basically it's shining a light on a subject where there's so much stigma, so much discrimination in Pakistan. And I was thinking, how is the best way to do it? And then pop culture is the answer. Because if you go out making speeches about unsafe sex and condoms, it's the best way to empty a room. And, and so I looked at first woman I met, Shukriya Gul, HIV positive, and such a stout activist, you know, and her story is that her husband died. She was HIV positive, and you know, her whole neighborhood wanted her to leave. They wanted to burn her house down, and Shukriya said, no way. I'm going to live here, I'm going to stay here, my kids are going to stay here. And she has one of the biggest NGOs for HIV/AIDS. So I was so inspired by Shukriya's campaign that I made a video about it, Alvida. Because I feel that you can get difficult messages across through, through MTV, basically, and satellite television, and people see it over and over, and their minds change, and they look at HIV/AIDS, people who live with HIV/AIDS in a more humane way.
It's interesting, Salman, because there's something of a dichotomy in what you do. Your activism is back home in Pakistan as well as back home in America too. So you've got one thing where you've got the HIV issues and so on taking place in a place where it's difficult to talk about it. But in the US, your concern is more about the plight of Muslims and the image of Muslims. So tell me what happened after 9/11. You said it was something that sort of inspired you to come back. What was life like as a Muslim man, a Pakistani living in New York after that?
Well, my best memories is of growing up, in New York. I went to junior high school. This is where I picked up a guitar. I was in a garage band. And then 9/11 kind of, all of a sudden changed that whole reality into this sort of us and them thing, And when most Muslims were thinking of leaving the United States, I said to my wife, I said, you know what, I want to go back because I need to reconnect and find out what exactly is happening in the States. And so since I've been back, yes, that it's more difficult. Muslims find themselves underneath a huge microscope. The racial profiling, at the airport security checks.
I think we share those.
Yeah, I get to talk about music with them because we spend so much time, at a security check. But so for me, it was finding out what is my Muslim identity. I think 9/11 brought about an introspection, a deeper introspection. And then I also want to communicate that, the America I saw growing up here to the Muslim world and and Pakistan or the Muslim world to the Americans. So I'm straddling both universes.
How do you overcome something I also experienced, that at the grassroots level, the people on both sides are fine, they're willing to understand each other, but it's at a political level there's a misunderstanding. Say Pakistanis are wary of Americans because of the government or the policies, and the same with America with Pakistan and what they perceive to be policies and government, and there's a misunderstanding. How do you deal with that side of it?
Well, Riz, I've always found politics demonize, and culture expression humanizes people. And you really need to see people as human beings first, not as, demographics or extremists or liberals or conservatives or, moderates. You need to see people, because people have many different positions, You can't just put people in a box, It's like saying this is rock, that's jazz, and that's hip hop, It doesn't work like that with the human beings. We're not unidimensional. So for me, it's just continuing on trying to just, bridge the divide, because what's happening is that politicians who want power, they want to spread fear, And the same thing is what the extremists do as well. I remember when I was growing up in Pakistan, they would always be saying, playing music is a Western thing. It's not, it's haram in Islam. It's prohibited. Yeah. And I would say, well, show me in the Quran. Where does it say that you cannot play music? And obviously they wouldn't be able to do it. So they're searching for the same market share that sports and popular entertainment is the youth market that they're looking for, and they're afraid of losing their gig.
Now, let's take us through your childhood, those early years. You were shuttling between the US and Pakistan, leading this double life. Did you see yourself more as American, more as Pakistani? How were you able to reconcile the two?
It was organic. I was who I was. I am who I am. But post 9/11, it's almost as if that the Muslim part of my DNA has been magnified. And every time I do, when I do an interview in the West, it's almost as if the interviewer is looking for some lurking fundamentalist underneath the moderate person. You know, so you feel kind of paranoid, but also I feel that either you confront this or you run away, and I've chosen to confront it.
Well, as a child, though, how aware? I mean, as a very young boy, how much aware were you of the two, the East and the West?
Well, I'll tell you this, that, you know, I was a huge Yankee fan, right? And I remember that the Yankees were in a one-game playoff against the Red Sox at Fenway Park. And I remember saying my Panch Waqt my 5 times prayer, praying to Allah that the Yankees beat the Red Sox. You know, so I mean, faith is something, you know, if you grow up as a Muslim or in Pakistan, faith comes it's a part of your culture. You know, belief is a part of your culture. But I never saw my faith as being some sort of a ideology which you know asks for, you know, human a sacrifice or you know, martyrdom. You know, I never saw that. And when I read now after 9/11, when I read the Quran, I understand it in its totality. You know, and what the extremists are doing is cherry picking stuff which feeds their objectives, and that's being magnified in the media everywhere.
Were your parents strict on you? Because they didn't like you playing guitar 18 hours a day locked away in your room, did they?
Yeah, especially when it started bleeding.
That bad, huh?
Yeah, my mother, you know, said, look, this is a hobby, but, you know, good Pakistani boys become doctors. So it was very difficult. I mean, I never entertained the thought of being a professional musician because it was just such a distant, you know, it was like, oh, you can't even dream about it, you know?
How did they react when you suddenly were on stage?
My mother freaked. My mother said, you know, okay, you've become a Mirasi, which is a low-caste musician. She said, you know, look at the people in our family. They're all doctors and they're respectable people. And here you are, you know, picking up an instrument. And how are you going to support yourself? And to be honest, she said, look, there's nobody in Pakistan who makes a living out of playing music, rock music, okay? They do it as a hobby, but nobody makes a living out of it.
I presume I gave her a nice big fat check when you sold 20 million albums. Prove her wrong.
Now it's a completely different story. Yeah, you know, she said, I always knew you were going to make it.
Salman Ahmad, don't go away. We're back with more one-on-one in just a moment.